Welcome to episode 15 of The Young Man and the Three. Mr. Trey Murphy in the building right now. Trey, we got a great episode today. We got Cam Johnson, Duncan Robinson, the triumphant return of Jarrett Allen. And we're starting with your Eagles, man. I don't think everybody knew about your Eagles fandom, so maybe you can unpack this a little bit for everybody listening and watching at home, because I'm going to be honest with you. When you called me after the game on Sunday night, I also did not know you're an Eagles fan.
Yeah, I don't really say too much about it because I am in Saints country right now, and I don't want these fans to be mad at me about it. But yeah, I am an Eagles fan mainly because of Mike Vick. Well, solely because of Mike Vick. That was my favorite player growing up. And I started watching football around 9 or 10 years old when he got to the Eagles, and I just started loving them since then.
And you just kept it.
Yeah.
And was it because it was how much of this with a guy like Vic? I mean, there's a lot to love, but how much of this was, watching him and following him, and how much of this was Madden?
Oh, it was probably 95% Madden.
Yeah,
and then
that's what I was going to say.
5% was watching him play.
This is how it goes. All right, so you guys were in OKC Sunday. Did you watch with the team or solo?
Yeah, no, we had a little watch party at our hotel. We actually have a few Eagles fans on staff. So I was with them, and I didn't move my seat. I made sure I stayed in the same seat the entire time because we were winning, and I didn't want to change anything. And I was happy with the way that we were playing.
When did you feel comfortable?
Probably the Devontae Smith touchdown. I feel like that was the one where I was like, all right, this is over with.
That was the boot on the neck. I'm not gonna lie, bro. I was there. I would say the pick six, everybody started to get this sense that like this feels weird. And and I don't know if this is happening. And then the second pick at the end of the first half, like I didn't see any world where they were coming back in the second half. There was just sometimes you just don't have it,
Yeah, he just didn't have any time in the pocket. And
the
D-line has been monsters all year. So
that defense, the whole defense, but that front seven, like
really elite. And then also we got better corners now than we did previous years. So now if you take away that first read, then he doesn't have a lot of time to make any other reads.
Yeah. So we haven't taped since the deadline. We did the stuff after the Luka trade last week. Before we get into a couple other things, intro wise, I wanted to get your thoughts and also just get some of your favorite memories and stories from one of your favorite people, BI. Obviously, the trade happened, and it just announced today that he signed a new 3-year deal in Toronto. And this is a guy that, as you've known very well and spoken very highly of since you've come into the league. And so I just wanted your perspective, now that he's still your friend, but not your teammate anymore, just on the overall, your sort of overall thoughts on the move.
Yeah. So, as a team, we kind of knew that it was going to happen either at the deadline or at the summertime. So we still enjoyed our time with him, and he was still like I said, like you said, a good friend of ours. But after that after the what game? It was after that Denver game. We actually saw it on Twitter, and it was like, oh wow, like it really happened. And that's when we just talked to him. We said our last few words. He actually even stayed the next day, like right before we left for the bus to go to the airport. He was in the lobby saying bye to everybody. And that just shows how he is. He, made sure he said bye to everybody that was there in the organization. And because he's just been a stand-up guy the entire time. So, it was a little sad for sure, but obviously it's probably a better situation for him. And he gets his money like he wanted. And, I'm just super happy for him because there's not a guy that doesn't deserve him more than he does.
Yeah, he's super good dude. I got to know him. We've had him on the show. We had him on the show once, but I got to know him a little bit better when he was when we were all in Manila. Super funny, just a really funny dude, and he's in a
Underrated.
spot. Yeah, underratedly funny, and he's in a spot now where him and Scotty together is a real tough. They do really different things, and so he hasn't played yet, but it's going to be really sort of interesting to see how that fit sort of coalesces out there.
Absolutely.
I wanted to get your perspective on Luka last night. We talked about the fit before, right after the trade, before he played his first game. They went and lit it up last night against Utah. First of all, Jackson Hayes, I feel like is in an amazing spot playing with those two. It just feels like he's going to get, and they just signed Alex Len today. It feels like whoever's playing the center position is going to have a lot of opportunity. But you were playing last night and you were flying back, so it wasn't like you got the chance to watch the game live. But catching up a little. Did you?
After our game was over, everybody had their phones out.
All right. So what do you think?
Wi-Fi, like all that stuff.
So what'd you think?
I think obviously, you still want to see more. The sample size is small, but it's kind of similar to how like him and Luka were. Him and Luka and Kyrie were in Dallas, but it's just different because LeBron is more so like a screener in this, two-man game with Luka. And if you have LeBron in the short role, which he's really good at, he's able to make decisions and play make out of that, and also is less taxing on him. So both of them are going to have a lot less responsibility on the ball. So then when it comes to the fourth quarter, they'll probably be, in better condition, let's say, than what the previous been.
Well, I was going to say we should also talk about AR for a second because he's just been going. I was looking at the numbers today. He's been going crazy in February, 28, 6-6. He had a great game against the Pacers the other day when these guys weren't playing. But it feels like the three of them together, JJ's going to have a good time trying figuring out what to do with these guys because they at any point you got somebody who feels like they can run the show.
Yeah.
So last night you guys played the Thunder. I wanted to talk intro wise about your approach against a team like this. This is the team that right now currently, I don't know if you saw this, they have the best net rating of all time, 13.5. The 96 Bulls are at 13.4. You had a good game last night, 23 points. Playing against Dort, playing against this D, as you're trying to kind of figure it out. What does your overall approach look like?
My bad, bro. I got something in my eye.
The pod listeners are gonna have to go to YouTube to see the reaction.
Nah, you had to be really attentive. I know for sure I was watching a lot of film before the game on, how they guard guys. And the biggest thing isn't the first line of defense. Obviously they have really good point of attack defenders, but once you get past them, it's literally like bees on honey. They attack the ball at a crazy rate. They all converge and they're forcing you to make the pass out. And they're just you're just gonna have to beat us in 3-point line.
What was your perspective? There's a lot of talk, and we talked about it with Dub when he came on the show. They haven't had the two bigs together. They finally got him back. How that looks.
Yeah, no, that's also crazy. It's similar to how, Minnesota would play with Cat. They'll have, one of the stronger bigs on whoever the bigger wing is, and then have the other one kind of roam. And so once you get past the first big, which isn't easy, you got another big that's a shot blocker, probably Chet, going to time up, help side blocks. And, it's definitely tough. You got to be very aware of where everybody is on the floor, when you're out there on offense. I know that was my biggest thing was just don't play rushed, because every single team that I've watched, whenever they rush against them, it's always turnover. They're either going to get deflection or they're going to get steal. They're going to get out of transition. And, if you let them live in transition, you're going to have a really long night.
Before we get to explain a little bit for the audience, we have a 2-part interview today. We have about 45 minutes with Duncan and Cam, who I don't know if he told you, Trey, but Cam is doing 3 points, so you might see this weekend in San Fran. So we have a 2-part thing with Duncan and Cam, and then we did about an hour in a bookstore with Jarrett Allen in DC, which was pretty fun and goes all over the place. Before we get to that, Trey, before we wrap, give us one other person, thing, moment that you've been impressed by over the last week in the league.
I'm probably going to say what's just sticking out to me right now is the Cavs getting DeAndre Hunter. I think that's going to be really big for them in the playoffs because they actually now have like a true small forward that really defends at a high level. Like, in my opinion, DeAndre is one of the better point of attack defenders in the entire league.
Yeah.
And he's really strong. He can move his feet really well. Long defender. Like, he's a really high level defender. So, and then now he has Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley behind him. So whenever you're on the ball and you have guys that can block shots behind you, you're literally just like, you know what, I'm just going to press into you. And if you get by me, good luck making a layup over there. So.
And that when you look at the East, obviously everything in the East is flowing through Boston. It feels like it was a thing that they had to have in some way.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, it's tough with DG and Donovan. Obviously, they're doing a lot better defensively this year, but at the end of the day, it's going to be tough for them to be able to guard Tatum and Brown, like, at their size.
Something about
not saying they can't, but it would just be tough.
It'd be tough. It's something about those UVA guys, him and Ty.
Yeah, UVA guys, man, they just know what to do.
Somehow you guys have figured it out. Thank you, Trey, for joining us. This is episode 15. We're going to go to the convo with Duncan and Cam right now. Trey, we'll see you this weekend.
Appreciate you, my dog.
What do you think the most underrated or under-discussed important issue just around the league in general is? Or just from a player perspective, but just overall?
I don't want to hate too much on the shooting threes thing because you're looking at two beneficiaries of the time. I honestly don't think it's an issue. I think it could become an issue if it continues to sort of like be a thing. And obviously there's been a couple games this year where I think they set the record for like most threes missed and the play style and quality. We talked about this on another episode that we did. I think if you're just looking at popularity of the league based off of like broad and general TV ratings, I think that's a misguided way to really evaluate. I think the league's obviously at an all-time high in terms of popularity. It's just people engage with NBA content in a very different way. A lot of it's social media. A lot of it's obviously the streaming stuff. And it's just done so differently. I do think that trying to actually kind of change the actual product, and I know they've talked about like going down to 10-minute quarters and messing with it in ways like that. I do think being adaptable is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just they're going to need to be very, very strategic over what sort of concessions or choices they make as they kind of move forward with that.
Thoughts on 10-minute quarters?
I think it makes sense. Obviously, the NBA is like the only league that has 12. I think the tricky thing becomes it's a lot less points and it's a lot less minutes actually for other guys. Like, How do you really have a second? You look at someone like the Knicks, like, does that just mean that those guys are just going to play 40 minutes a game still? And guys that Deuce McBride, like, well,
Kale's never going to sit.
He's a great player. Deuce is a great player, and he's been able to play, really meaningful, impactful minutes for them. Like, benches are going to become more and more obsolete, which I think is a bad thing. Would be my rebuttal to it. I get it, what you're trying to do, but I think there's some challenges that come with it.
I agree. You'll have guys that are playing 35 minutes a game, and you'll have guys that are playing 5. I don't think it'll be
right.
Yeah. So you just basically are changing a lot from a team building perspective, and changing how you invest in team building and how you value, bench players.
Do you have a shift? Do you have a thing that that's what's interesting about the 3-point thing is maybe it's not here now, but it may be here, a year
as to style of play,
or just anything.
Like specific rules, I don't anticipate too much change. I think things will be talked about. Things will be talked about in terms of season length. Things will be talked about in terms of game length. But I don't think there are any immediate changes coming. I just don't see it happening.
I got one thing, and I think I stole this from Zach Lowe, but this is a no-brainer to me. I think that last-second shots at the end of quarters should fall into a different field goal percentage sort of like category, statistical category. So there's nothing I hate more than when guys will like dribble out the quarter and then launch a three-quarter court shot, knowing that it doesn't count.
Yeah.
But they just shoot it because like, oh, I just didn't get it off in time. We need to be encouraging guys launching those shots. Like they should not count towards your 3-point percentage or your field goal percentage. They should just be an entirely different category. Anything beyond half court.
So under 5 seconds, what's the number?
Yeah.
Anything beyond half court. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
you could create like I think they understand the concept of what's a heave and what's a legitimate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just use some discretion.
Yeah.
I think, I get why guys don't do it. Some guys have incentives in their contracts for percentages and whatnot. But we should be launching those. Everybody should be launching those.
I agree.
What do you think the most unstoppable play in the NBA is right now?
What do you mean? Like
a play where that it can be a team, it can be an individual, but just a thing where you it's coming, but they've mastered it so well that you just hope that they miss because there's really not anything you can do about it.
I still think the dynamic of having Jamal Murray and Jokic pick and roll with like Aaron Gordon like burning and cutting on the baseline. That sort of
just hanging in the dunker.
Yeah, that sort of like 3-man combination. No disrespect to the other two guys, but like a massive part of that is obviously just how dynamic Jokic is. Like once that ball gets back to him, how skilled he is and how elite his decision making is. I think that's up there in terms of just like actions in the NBA.
Yeah.
Down the line of like, if you're coming down the wire of a game, like what I would feel very comfortable getting to over and over again, it would be that.
Those Giannis clear outs are another one where he kind of gets that head of steam going downhill. And it's like, you're kind of faced with a decision. Like you're going to stand in front of him completely and like body up. He's really good at drawing fouls. He's probably going to run you over in the process. He can kind of wiggle around you. You want to send extra help. He can fire the corners. And obviously, playing him in the finals, that was something that became really, really hard to game plan for. Like playoffs, you play a lot of good players, do a lot of things, and it's all about adjustments. It's all about, how can we counter what they're doing? How can we counter what they're doing? The problem we ran into with Milwaukee was like, it's so hard because it's just like there is no clear-cut answer on how to stop that when it's going. And so I'd say that's another one.
Maxey right now is up there too. Him on that like right slot, just getting to his right hands. We played them last night. He's unbelievably fast, obviously with the ball in his hands, and has just like his skill level is super high, and his decision making too. So I think he's another one that's just up there in terms of like actions you feel good about just getting to every time is just having him the ball in his hands going to his right.
We did an app with Bilal earlier this week, and he was talking about Jalen Brunson and the footwork. And basically, when he starts getting into it, he's like, Bilal's like a great, crazy athlete. He's going to be a great defensive player, probably already is. And he's just like, there's nothing he's like, my head starts spinning. There's nothing I can do.
Yeah, that's JB's put a lot of time and work into understanding how to play with leverage, understanding how to get defenders, off balance, and take advantage of those types of movements. And he's one of the best. I mean, he's a small guard. Like he's not tall at all. It's not even like he's the quickest guy either. He's strong, but he's not the quickest. He's not the fastest. He just there's a couple guys in the NBA that just really understand angles really, really well. And he's one of them.
Yeah, I don't have to guard guys like Jalen outside of maybe on a switch. So maybe you can speak to this more than I can. But his ability to be so physical and relentless with his drives and then on a moment just shift into, and I'm not saying it's flopping, but like initiate contact and then just like accentuate the contact.
And the hair moving.
Like
and
the head snaps back. You get like the noises to go with it. But like his ability to shift from being so physical on his drives to then, as a defender, it's like, I don't really know how you have to like lose battles. You can't try to win every battle at the point of a screen or on a drive, because if you try to get physical in a moment, he's making sure that you're paying for it like right away.
Yeah, and he's just so good at also playing on 2 feet. You know what I mean? Which I think is a huge thing that they do at Villanova. But he's just like, he has that shift from like downhill attack to just playing on 2, which is a lot harder to do than people would think.
I wonder if I mean he's probably been in this place for the last couple of years, but if some of the stuff Shea does, it falls into this category when he starts getting into it.
That's one of them. That's one of them for sure.
Yeah,
that absolutely deserves to be mentioned. He's the same. He gets downhill, attacks those angles, and when he gets into that, point of contact with his body, all it takes is just that off arm, like kind of like little chicken wing, gets you off balance. Or if you want to counter it and try to be physical and hold your ground, then it looks like you just launch him into the third row and he's going down. So it's one of those things where he has those things. He has the angles, he has a change of direction and the physicality. And then the touch to go along with it, it's what makes him really elite.
You know who has a crazy off arm that is like super underappreciated is Denny Avdia.
I saw a clip tape of it the other day.
This dude put me in a body bag. I was like, this is maybe like 3 weeks ago. I'll stand and die on a hill that it was an offensive foul because it for sure was. But he is so physical on his drives, and he uses that off arm when that bump and then like steps off it with like a euro. Stuff I've seen you do before also, where it's like they're so physical, but it's not necessarily an offensive foul because there's no extension. There's nothing crazy that really looks like it's an offensive foul, even though the one on me was for sure an offensive foul.
We're gonna pull the tape because it was.
The tape I was in disbelief. Josh Tiven was the official. I was like, in what planet is that not an offensive foul? I mean, I got absolutely bundled on the play. But yeah, he's another one who's like super physical on his drives.
They've been balling.
Yeah.
They've been playing.
Yeah, they have.
They're in the West. In the West too. They're just kind of running.
Yeah,
they're just like
in development.
They have a lot of talent.
2025 comes and
they do. They've been hooping.
This is a completely subject change, but I'm curious your guys' perspective. I stuck with JJ about this all the time. You ever had as a not as a person but as a player? You ever had imposter syndrome?
Yeah. I think that's sort of been documented in my career. So I don't want to like unpack it too much, but yeah, for sure. I think we all, as like, Cam's obviously has like a very circuitous position to where he is today. Like you weren't, 5-star out of high school and been that dude since middle school, like the whole thing. So I think a big part of growing and experiencing success is learning to wrestle with the emotions of feeling like you're not where you belong or you're feeling like you're in over your head. I think that's part of what makes, the journey and the experience so rewarding. If you kind of choose to look at it with that sort of perspective, I think it makes it sort of easy to manage. And I think you also want this level of like anxiety and uncertainty. I think that's kind of what keeps you, focused and
what drives you.
Yeah. Like motivator.
Yeah. I'd say, at least for me personally, like, the fear of failure, the fear of not like being good enough, not being enough. And that's to whatever level that you hold yourself to drives me more than just about anything. But yeah, it is something that I deal with because, at the end of the day, a lot of people say a lot of things. And you hear that noise your whole career, and no matter where you come from, there's always been people that doubt you. So when, things come up, things get a little sticky or whatever, it's easy for those voices to kind of increase, But I think at the end of the day, it all comes back to just understanding which voices matter, and understanding like who you are and what you're capable of. And there's a reason you're in the position you're in. There's a reason I'm in the position I'm in. And there's a reason that not that many other people are in that position. You know what I mean? And I think at the end of the day, you got to understand who you're doing it for.
Yeah. I was going to say particularly with shooters, because you're going to have that slump. You're going to have that 4 games where you're like, 2 for 25 and everybody is looking crazy at you
like,
versus.
Dude, I could go for 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could go for, you know what I mean? So, percentages are tricky, right?
Super delicate.
Yeah. And you can manipulate them.
Yeah.
You can. Percentages only indicate the past.
Explain how you can manipulate them.
Oh, It's like the quality of the shots, the types of shots you're shooting.
50, 40, 90 guy.
Yeah, well, I just don't think they tell the whole story.
They don't. They do not
on paper, like they don't. But you, for example, like you're percentage-wise, you're having as efficient of a year as you've ever had, especially with the volume. How like conscious of the percentages are you?
Not very. Especially this year. Right. I feel like I with a lot of attempts comes a lot of random outcomes, comes a lot of games where you might be 2 for 10 and then a game where you can get hot and be 7 for 11, you know? So I don't pay that much attention to them because especially, and it's an acquired thing. Like it's not easy, you know? Yeah. It's like if you feel in a game that you're 1 for 7, like you feel that increased pressure going into the next shot. There is an actual effect of that.
For sure.
And the best don't let it affect them and can approach the next shot with a very clear head. But in general, misses add up in a game, it weighs on you. So there is a process to learning how to clear your head of the past, having that short-term memory. Everybody talks about it. Nobody, really, it's just a lot easier said than done. And so for me personally, I think the overall understanding is that during an 82-game season, I'm going to have a lot of attempts. I'm going to have a lot of attempts. And I'm going to have good days, I'm going to have bad days, I'm going to have good weeks, I'm going to have bad weeks. Just kind of riding the wave and trusting the work. Percentages are tricky. Like I said, they are only an indication of the past. In my opinion, they got nothing to do with what the next shot's going to do.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's all about shot prep. It's all about getting back to the basics, understanding what makes a shot go in and how you can best, give yourself the best chance of making that one shot more so than what I did the last 10.
Yeah, it's a great, that idea of just being process driven, because that to me is what shooting really is how committed to the process can you be. The tricky thing with percentages is like I always tell people, all right, I go into a game, I take 6 threes. If I go 2 for 6, 33%, that's not very good. If I go 3 for 6, that's 50%. That's
amazing.
That's amazing. Yeah. So what if that one shot hit every part of the rim, everything about the rep was great and just popped out? So you're going to get bent out of shape about that one rep that really should have gone in or could have gone in, or, you did everything right. Now you're going to let that dictate the next shot that you take or the next game, or how you even feel about how you played in that game. So I think building JJ would always talk about, if I have a 2 for 12 or whatever, I'm going to have a 6 for 10, right? Like it's always going to come back around. And I think building that trust and resolve that over time, I'm going to be right, around my number, 40%. You kind of build that trust, and that's like true, real confidence. That's what gets you through the moments where start a game 1 for 7, 1 for 6, that you're going to come back to it. And it might not be that game. That might be a 1 for 10. Like it just might be, like even the best shooters. I mean, Steph's had over 10s. Like that's just how it goes. But it's really just about trying to find and build the resolve to push through that and stay process driven.
Yeah. And understand that you've done it before. Understand that you've been through it. We've shot a lot of shots in the NBA. We shot a lot of shots in college, a lot of threes in high school, et cetera. Understanding that it does come back around. And, if he's in the game and he's one for 6, I'm not closing out. Like as a defender, you're like still afraid that the next one's, you know what I mean? It's like, there's that part of it too, is that like you understand that, the respect level that you have of defenses, no matter what your percentage is always going to be very high. And, it's kind of just your own mental thing that can get in the way of being able to move on from mistakes or misses.
When did you feel like you started with the no-dip 3? Where you started to feel very comfortable with it?
In the league is when I really started working on it. I think it really started in the corners. And a lot of my threes early in my career were I called the area from the baseline to the break as my real estate that I own. This is my land. I purchased real estate here. I'm gonna set up shop, get comfy, and understand that,
there's a lot of money in that corner, man.
The pick and roll's coming. Somebody's gonna help. I'll find me one. I could always do. I had great guards that could pass the ball. So I just kind of was because when I was younger, I didn't really like corner threes. So when I got to the league, it was like, all right, I'm gonna feel real comfortable with a lot of different shooting angles out of this corner three. And some of them are no dip. Some of them are no step-ins to them. Some of them are those micro adjustments. Some of them have a little fade to them, but just a lot of reps.
I think it's interesting, like finding places on the floor that you feel the most comfortable in. A lot of that's obviously like being intentional around, like, I'm going to practice this. Like, it makes sense that corner threes, obviously in the NBA, how coveted they are. But then also, like, you realize getting comfortable within a system or how you're playing, where shots generally start to come from. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it's who you're playing with, how you're playing stylistically, what the coach is preaching, but then how that can sort of compound of, all right, these are where my shots are coming. I'm going to start working on these and be a little more deliberate about, all right, I'm getting shots on this right wing, or I'm getting shots going to my right. That's like, now I feel more comfortable shooting off the dribble sometimes than I do off the catch. And that's not saying I'm like getting James Harden, like step back threes, but like one dribble, push dribble, or getting run off the line. I got so used to getting run off the line that I really would work that one dribble sidestep to the point where I'm like, damn, I'm like kind of getting away from just like catch and shoot threes. And then like you kind of realize that and you go back into working on that. So it's like you have like seasons and rhythm and flows of like how you're going to approach it and being deliberate with how you're going to approach the development aspect of it.
The most important thing, like you said, though, is understanding which shots you are comfortable with and which shots you're getting in the game and finding the best way to kind of maximize that. So a lot of us shooters will go back and watch. Like, for me personally, I'll go back and watch every three I'll take throughout a season, and I'll do that for, I'm in my 6th year now. I could randomly go back one day and pull up all my threes from my 3rd season, all my threes from my 2nd season, make some misses, and just see the trends. All my threes from the last 2 weeks, make some misses, see the trends. Where am I shooting them from? Where am I getting them from? What I did right on these shots, what I did wrong. And then I also have a thing kind of when I'm shooting, like kind of just like an expected outcome that I'll put towards the shot. Like I could quickly assign. So like when a shot leaves my hand, it's like, okay, 75% confidence. You know what I mean? Yeah, okay, like 80% confidence.
So your number, you'll put a number on it.
Yeah, in my head. And then I'll go back and watch the film. And then I'll say like, okay, it might have been an 80% confident shot. It might have gone out. It might have been a 20% confident shot. It might have gone in. And so that kind of becomes a better barometer for that game performance that, it's the difference between 2 of 7. And, maybe I was 2 for 5. Maybe I was 1 for 3. You know what I mean? It's like, that's 33%. That's 40%. But that 2 of 7, I have 4 of them, 5 of them that felt really good. Right. Like my shot's in a fine place. The ones, where you're slipping, bad misses, you're not, you're not feeling, the ball well and on your release. Those are the ones where I get back to the gym and then I start to sort out what's going on, get back to basics, form shooting, get back to where are the reps. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go back, and if I'm 2 for 10 in this game, the 8 threes that I missed, the different scenarios, I might go back and just rep out. One of them was a corner catch and shoot. One of them was a transition. One of them was an away screen. You know what I mean? And just like ease your mind. Like you can make these, you're good, and get back to it.
I like that concept of putting an expected result. Because if we talk about shooting being process driven, then you have to detach from the result to some extent. Like it can't, and obviously we live in like a bottom line business of the NBA, but as much as you can, you have to fight that, because if you really want to be a great shooter, it has to be about the process. Yeah. It has to be about the building blocks, the repetitions, the what goes into making shots, because shooting is all about consistency. It's doing the same thing or as many repeatable things over and over again. So detaching from the results, I think, is a huge part of that. I have stretches of training in the summer where the trainer that I work with, where we'll detach from the result. I'll shoot and close my eyes and just like not even see if the ball is going in or not, because it's not about that. It's more so about like, all right, what are you feeling? Because a lot of times you'll make a shot, but it won't be a good rep. And people don't necessarily understand what that means, but it's more about like, all right, am I doing all the things? Like Kyle Korver would always have a checklist. Like I'd always pick his brain on this. I'm not as maniacal as to where I can have like 12 things, but I always have like 1, 2, or 3 things that I'm really focusing on that usually lead to a good rep.
Would you mind sharing those? Or are they just...
Yeah, no, for sure. So one of them is like base is a huge part of it. So like getting your feet right. I have a certain, especially when I'm moving, I don't prefer to go 1-2. I like to go like one step into like a little hop. So like making sure I'm hitting that. The other one is actually not my right arm, but my left arm, making sure my offhand is tucked. Sometimes what will happen is I'll get what I call a little disconnected. The ball will kind of get removed from my body and I'll kind of get that two motion. Yeah. When things start getting a little sideways, that's sort of like an ism that I have. And, you know, it's like over time, you start to kind of feel, all right, this is when I start missing shots, I start to kind of do this, and you get a little bit more in tune with kind of what's happening. So I think about really kind of tucking my left elbow versus not my right. A lot of people think it's your right. It's actually counterintuitive. I think a lot about my left hand, because when I start to miss, my left hand is getting involved more than it should. So those are two that I like really focus on. And the last one is really about my finish, just like making sure I'm snapping and holding, especially with like tight closeouts. I'm not like leaving it, pulling it back, you know, worrying about contact, but instead of like standing on it, like really finishing, you know, the rep and the result. So yeah. What about you? You got stuff that you like think about, process?
Yeah, I think, especially for me, it's a moving target, right? So there's a bunch, there's a huge checklist and there's a lot of things that I could go over. I feel like my mind changes with how I'm feeling, with how things are going, how my body's feeling, whatever. I'd say number one is just base and catch. Like how much weight distribution is between my feet when I shoot. I want that 50-50. I want kind of like my center of mass. I want to feel real strong and confident in it. So I want that dip to be in, I think people use this analogy a lot, to be in a telephone booth. So like when you isolate the shot, no matter how much momentum's going in, is my center of mass perfectly in line with the ball, where that I'm going straight up and straight down, because then naturally that just eliminates so much of that random left, right.
Yeah.
And when you have too much of that lean, you have to make up for that left, right with the follow through, with the flick, with, the very end of the shot, which is just too much to ask when you're searching for consistency. So basically make everything as consistent as possible through the motion so that the release is not, it does not have to do too much. So then that's when the muscle memory really takes over. In terms of release point, some days I'll have to go back to kind of finding the seams on the ball. Some days I'll have to go back to, you know, handing the cookie jar. Mm-hmm. On movement shots, I think the base is the big one, and how my feet are putting, you know, force into the ground. So I do this in my warm-ups every game. I'll do 1-footed threes off my left, off my right. And it's all my warm-up and pregame is just a barometer for how I'm feeling that day and what else I need going forward in warm-ups. So all I'm doing is paying attention to where the ball's going. I'm not concerned about makes and misses. I'm not concerned about anything, just about how everything is flowing. So it's like, you know, I'm shooting off my left leg and they keep going flat and to the left, flat and to the left. I need to push through it more to get me back in the center. Same thing with the right. You know what I mean? So, I just try to pay attention to a lot of those details just to put myself in the best position possible, where that I feel like when I get into the game, I'm not thinking about those little things. I'm not.
That's the crazy thing though, because we're talking about all these things that we think about, but then if you touch back on the games where you shoot the ball the best, and I were to ask you, like, what are you thinking about? It's nothing. So it's like, that's the whole trick of, obviously you need all these reps and this muscle memory, but it's really to create within you this idea of like playing mindless.
Is that flow state?
Free.
Yeah. Yeah. Like a shooting flow state. Like there's basketball flow state, but there's a shooting flow state.
Yeah, he talked about that. We talked about that with Steph for sure. He would talk about it a lot. And then even Trey, I talked about Trey the other night when Trey's been going crazy recently. And he's like, once you get into that spot,
you're not thinking.
You don't even know what's going on.
What's my way or what's my finish looking like? Like there's something in you that's taking over. And what it is years and years of repetition and feel and work, and all of that's coming to fruition on a stage where you're not even you're able to do it just unconsciously.
And all we're saying right now is these are the ways that we do our best to put ourselves in that flow state come game time. That's it.
We're going to wrap in a second because you have a dinner, but I wanted to close.
You have dinner too.
I have a dinner. We all have dinner. And this will be, we will have a part 2 of this either here in
We
Miami.
could probably talk about shooting.
I know. I was going to say that's a 2-hour thing.
It's like if we add JJ to this conversation, it could go a million different ways. Sure. You know what I mean?
We'll close out question. Because you guys have both, you've had it on one team, you've had it in a few teams now. If you were to sort of think about your best teammates, your favorite teammates, what characteristics they share, even if they're like different people, is there a thing that they all have in common?
I've had so many great teammates. I would say being able to walk this line between being incredibly serious about their craft and grateful for the opportunity of playing in the NBA while not taking themselves too seriously. I think being able to exist in this lane where this means everything to me and how I approach this says something about who I am. But at the same time, I'm able to like sit back and laugh at, myself, be self-deprecating, laugh at others, laugh at their circumstances, situation, being able to kind of be nuanced in that sense. I think it also, there's like tough days of an NBA season, which is a crazy thing to say because we're playing basketball, a kid's game for a living. But there's like challenging moments. There's, you're on the road a long time, you're this, that, whatever. Like being able to just kind of have perspective, I think is really important as well.
Yeah, I'd say some of the best teammates I've had, they've always been consistent with who they are, with what their approach is, with how they treat their teammates, with how they treat the staff, how they treat the people in the building. They're just very consistent people. They're consistent with their energy and I've had that in a lot of different ways. I've had it in guys that are like the personalities of the team. So you guys that are just like keep everybody laughing, and no matter the circumstance, keep everybody laughing. Just keep everything light and kind of that voice when that's needed. And I've had it when it's like, tough guy leaders. It's like that's who they are, but you respect it.
Yeah.
What
you're getting.
Yes, you know what you're getting.
Sure.
Duncan, Cam, to be continued.
For sure.
Thank you, boys.
It's a good time.
Mr. Jarrett Allen, live from Bridge Street Books,
yes.
Georgetown, Washington, D.C. Little announcement to make. I feel like when we tape these from now on, we're going to try, if at all possible, to tape them in bookstores in different places around the country.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Do you want to give a little background, on sort of why we're doing that, and then also just maybe on this store in particular and sort of your experience here?
Right. I'm a reader. I like reading books. And this bookstore in particular is literally like a minute from the hotel. And
Not even. It's like 45 seconds.
Yeah. It's like a quaint bookstore and it has everything that I need.
We're going to get to some of the books that we've picked out in particular that have sort of caught your eye in the last 20 minutes as we've been bouncing around. When did this start though? Because I think we've talked about, I don't think we ever talked about in the show.
Mm-hmm.
And you, Catherine, and I have talked about like ideas in bookstores before.
Right.
But I feel like a lot of guys on the road, it's like they do treatment, they see family, go to dinner.
Uh-huh.
I don't think there's very many other people I've met who are like constantly hanging out in the bookstore.
Right. I guess when I got in the league, I was looking for something to do. I'd go out to eat or something like by myself, explore a new restaurant. And it's like, oh, there's a bookstore next door, go check it out, grab a book. And it's just something I try to do in every city. I had to slow down a little bit because I have so many books and I have a big backlog. But I don't know, it's fun, it's quiet, it just slows everything down.
But do you buy every time or do you sometimes go and just browse?
I go with the intention to buy. But sometimes I just browse.
Yeah.
Like I'll go through every single section.
Is there a trait? The other bookstore we wanted to shout out, or I want to shout out, I know you're a fan as well, though it's just too far away, so we didn't have time to go in DC, is Kramer Books, which is a little bit of a different vibe because it's bigger and there's like a cafe and stuff like that. Is there like a constant trait? And I think I think the people, watching and listening will see this as we go to different ones of these around the country, but is there a constant trait that you sort of see that makes a good bookstore?
That's actually a great question. I'm big on flow. Sometimes bookstores, I know it's going to sound like I study them, but you have one long hallway and then things that jut out on the side, like aisles. I'm not a fan of that. You got to have to be able to like wander around the bookstore and not have to go like shopping down like linear grocery store aisles.
That's interesting. So it has to be it has to have its own kind of like visual look that doesn't feel like you're just picking out groceries and you're just grabbing what you need and getting out of there.
Yeah. You want to be able to wander around the bookstore.
Do you feel like it needs to have a place to like a nook, like a place to like sit and like read? Because I feel like that's a big thing in general, is being able to, take a book and read the first 25 pages and then decide like, oh, I'm gonna go buy this or not.
No, I'm against that for two reasons. One, the seats always end up being nasty. You know what I mean?
Like train station.
Right. About 50, 60 people have sat in the same chair.
Yeah.
And you're like, what is that mark? What is the stain? I'm good on that.
The hygiene of it, I'm not sure they're going and wiping it down all the time.
Exactly. And the second thing, I don't like people bending my books.
Oh, interesting.
If I buy a book, I want it to be in perfect condition.
Okay, that's a good question though, because that goes against the used model a little bit, which is a very popular thing, and it's a thing that has its own fan base of people that are just used bookstore people.
Mm-hmm. I'm not so much a used book guy. I'll buy from a local store.
Yeah.
I'll support local businesses, small businesses, but used books, unless it's like 40 years old and you like can see the history in it,
like a real collector's item.
Yeah. And I'm good with that.
Yeah, I think that also gets back to your hygiene thing. That gets back to like, you don't know what's been on these pages. No one's cleaning the page. Like, it's not like you can put it in the wash like a sweatshirt or something. Like,
you don't know how many people have touched this book, where it's been. You're
just touching it. Okay, so I think before we get into anything else, let's hit some of the ones that you picked out.
Yeah.
You got a few popular ones in here.
Yeah. Classic.
Martian.
The Martian.
Yes.
Yeah. You've probably seen the movie.
Great feature film. I've never read the book. Movie's great.
I mean, it's basically on point with the movie.
Yeah.
And it's tough to say which is better, the movie or the book. Shout out to Matt Damon. Excellent actor. Really made the movie.
What thematically stands out to you?
I don't really see too much themes. This is just a funny sci-fi book. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it hits all the marks. It's not going to win like crazy awards for like being like a thought-provoking book. It's a straight up
popcorn. It's entertaining.
Exactly. But a great book.
I don't know if I've ever asked you about this, but JJ was obsessed with it. A bunch of guys I feel like actually around the league are really obsessed with it. What are your Interstellar thoughts?
Great movie. I've only seen it once. I want to see it again. Long movie.
Yeah.
But it's up there with the greats.
Are you Nolan guy in general?
I am. My problem with Nolan, it's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
I want to sit down and like really absorb his movies. It's not like a plane ride movie. You got to like do it up to watch his movies.
I think that you have to be, I feel like the saving grace, and I'm sure you don't have too much time to go to the theater in season because it's a little bit of a different vibe than a bookstore.
Mm-hmm.
But the saving grace of the movie theater a little bit is you're there, your phone's not on, either solo or with people or whoever. Like, you're there locked in for 2.5 hours versus like if you're watching on a plane, even if you're watching at home, so you're on your phone, you got all kinds of shit that's like distracting you.
Yeah.
And his movies are built for that.
Yes.
Did you see Oppenheimer?
No, I haven't seen Oppenheimer. I want to see Tenet. I haven't had time.
Yeah, this is the Tenet is the one I feel like is the most people are the most on the fence about. I mean, Oppenheimer obviously won all those awards. Oppenheimer is just a crazy story.
Yeah.
And the performances are incredible.
Right.
We got another movie in there.
Dune. I mean, it's all-time classic. The Star Wars before the Star Wars, the space opera. I want to read the second one, The Child of the Messiah, something like that, before the third movie. They're supposed to make a third movie.
Were you into the book before the movie?
Yeah.
So it's always been.
Yeah, I picked up the book like maybe 2-3 years before the movie.
Yeah.
Didn't even know about it. So glad I read it before watching the movie.
My favorite thing about the new ones, which is a weird thing to be have a favorite thing about the movie, but Hans Zimmer's score, he absolutely crushes the score.
Yes.
And it sets, I mean, the cinematography is incredible too. Like everything about them are incredible. And Denis Villeneuve, like he's another one who's like Nolan, where he just kind of doesn't miss. But I remember watching the first one in the first 15 minutes, you're basically just like, I don't even care what's happening in the plot. But the setting is incredible.
I fell asleep on the first one.
Really?
I'm not ashamed to say.
Wow.
Yeah, it was so slow. Like even having read the book and everything, it was just so slow for me.
The second one, no, you're not falling asleep.
No,
second one is ripping.
From the beginning to end, it's amazing.
Jump.
But the first one, it was a lot for me.
This next one I'm curious about because I've heard so much about, but I don't know anything about really the vibe of it.
This
is the Ultimate Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yeah. Truth be told, I only read the first story. This is like a group of 5?
Yeah.
It's a comedy sci-fi book. Like it's funny. It's just a comedy sci-fi book. It's over the top. It's like it starts off with aliens are trying to build a highway and they got to destroy Earth because it's in the way of the galactic highway.
How does the comedy compare to, say, The Martian?
It's way more over the top. Like it's more, I don't even know how to say it. Like it's just funny, like goofy humor. Like just look at the old dude. Like, like that's just
on the cover is like
that's the basis of the story. And it's a fun read. At least the first one.
With books like this, I guess with all of these, are you rereading every couple of years, or are you kind of like, once I get through it, I'm good?
Once I get through it, I'm good. Like I don't really reread books. I'll rewatch a movie every now and then.
Would you reread Lord at all, or no?
No,
kind of like,
no, that was.
I guess because you locked into all of them. That was the thing. It was like such an ordeal.
Big mistake. I went from The Hobbit to The Return of the King.
Yeah, this is.
Oh my goodness.
By the way, this is why you don't have any time.
Yeah, because I'm reading books.
Because you went and did that chapter.
Yeah,
because people do that. I think with they do it with Harry Potter. They do it with those two for sure. Where it's like they'll read those books over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
But it also is a lot more challenging than watching a movie 20 times.
Right. Especially Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Like when they speak in Old English, it gets so mentally tiring to translate that into New English.
You're just like, all right, I got it. I had a mission. I accomplished my mission. I'm good.
Yes.
Like that's it.
Yeah.
Last one was just a Netflix show, Three Body Problem.
Mm-hmm.
Did you watch the show as well?
No, I haven't. Because they have the Netflix show and then China has a show about it, I believe.
Version. Oh, I didn't realize.
Yeah,
okay.
So there's like 2 different versions of shows, but favorite book series of all time.
Wow.
They didn't have the second book here, which is by far my favorite book I ever read. And that just shows how great it is. It's already sold out here.
Yeah.
Just like the amount of like thought that has to go into this book and like realistic future science that the author talks about, it's genuinely incredible.
Does it make you, in general, wary sometimes of watching adaptations of a thing that you're such a big fan of the book?
Yes and no. Because some people do it on point. Some people do it perfect. Some people do it like it should have been a movie or a TV show the whole time.
Yeah.
And others, it's like you should have left it alone.
There's an interesting, none of these are examples of this because these are all honestly massive. These are massive like staples. Like these are classics. But there's a whole industry. I've met a couple of these people who basically, they're mostly journalists and they write books basically to get adapted for film. So they'll take like a news story. So so a guy who's like very famous for doing this and he's very like unabashed about it. Do you ever watch Social Network? The one about Facebook. So the guy who wrote that book was called The Accidental Billionaires.
Okay.
They turned that book into the movie and he's probably had 5 or 6 of these things happen. And he'll write like a 9 or 10 page treatment on it. It'll be like, he's like, I want to make a movie about Jarrett Allen.
Right.
I want to make a movie about an NBA player Baker, basically. And so rather than write a whole book about you, what he'll do is he'll go and he'll write like a 9 page treatment about you. And then he'll take it out to the movie studios. He'll take it out to all those people and be like, hey, are you guys interested in this? And then if they are, then he goes and writes the book.
Really?
Because if they make the movie, then they're both going to be sort of like work hand in hand, which is an interesting strategy. I think it works for him. Like, all props to him.
Right.
I'm not sure it's for everybody.
I mean, if it works, it works.
Yeah, but
yeah, I heard something similar. I read Little Fires Everywhere.
Oh yeah,
yeah, it's a Netflix show now. Reese Witherspoon does the same thing basically
with the book clubs.
Yeah, the book clubs. Yeah. I found that so interesting. Like,
yeah, it is really.
It makes sense. Why not?
Well, you have this built-in crazy audience for something. I feel like the thing which is tricky though, which is sort of what I was asking with you with like Three Body, for example, is when you have people who are such fans of something,
right?
I feel like their guard is up already that you're going to ruin it.
Yeah.
That you're going to like take the thing and then when you're reading something, you're basically taking the words on the page and you're putting them into your own brain and versus like, I wouldn't have cast that person.
Right.
I wouldn't have done this. I wouldn't have done this. And so for you to be able to nail, it's kind of like with sequels when the thing is really popular and then the sequel just doesn't live up to it.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to be able to like block out the hate. It's coming.
As Star Wars fans. Yes. Oh my goodness. It's been a rough ride.
Star Wars fans are like that. I feel like some Marvel stuff is like that.
Right.
Like depending on some of it sometimes is just like specific casting, which feels like unfair because it's like whatever, everyone's entitled. It's like people on sports. Like everyone's entitled to their opinion, but like it doesn't mean that you're like
right. Oh, after they killed Thanos, everybody's upset. Yeah, everybody.
All right. So last time we taped one of these was November. Mid-November. We were talking about we had a nice conversation about the keyboards.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any new things, any new fascinations? This is going to be an ongoing trend, I think, on these episodes. Is like what in the last 6 weeks has like popped up that basically you are not that you've given up on keyboards, but that you are now obsessed with.
That I'm obsessed with right now. I guess furniture shopping right now. Like as weird as it's gonna sound, like it's some adult stuff. Like
what kind of for what room though? Like what's the
new master bedroom set? A new dresser, new mattress frame.
But did you guys move or are you just redoing it?
Yeah, recently moved. So.
Okay, so you got to go through this whole process.
Yeah, and I'm somebody that like I want it to be perfect. I want it to be like this matches this. You don't want too much metal, and then you want to like change it with upholstery so that it doesn't clash. I'm that type of guy.
So, basketball.
Yeah,
you guys are 41-10.
Yes,
currently. Second best offensive rating pace in NBA history still. I think when we last talked, it was around then. It was like first or second.
Right.
The win last night was crazy.
Oh man.
You had a little thing at the end.
Yeah.
But I'm just like, even with his shot, do you feel like we're taping this, on Thursday in DC after the game in Detroit, the Wednesday night before.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that's kind of like symbolic of who he's been all year in terms of just like, this is about to be a horrible loss. Yeah. And then he just comes down and sticks the dagger.
I told you in the last podcast, he had his jaw sewn shut, it couldn't do it. Just give him time, and he's going to get right back to who he is.
Yeah.
And, that's just the game last night solidified that he's back. I mean, not the game last night. He's been doing it all year, but in All-Star, he's him.
Yeah. Well, we should shout out, since the last time it's happened, it's like 3 All-Stars on this team.
Yes.
Which is incredibly impressive. But it also feels like, the trend that we've hit on before, and I think it's, now been talked about even more so, is just the overwhelming depth,
right?
And the ability to have, Ty is doing it one night, and Karras one night, George one night, and so it's like you're getting the consistency from you, you're getting the consistency from Evan, and then the guards, obviously, you talk about Darius, people know this about Donovan forever, but just the ability basically to have to have a next man up every night just feels like it can just be overwhelming for these teams. And even if they have like 1 or 2 stars, they need them to be on all the time to beat you.
Yeah. First, shout out to Ty Jerome. He's been having an amazing season after missing all of last year.
Yeah.
you said it about the team. Any night, somebody can have an excellent night.
Yeah.
You know, like I said, Ty, he can go off and have 20 and 5 assists, you know, or it's Donovan's night, or it's Evan like last night who had 30. It's incredible how much depth we have on this team.
What have you noticed? You know, we taped last time you guys were about to play. We taped last time you guys were undefeated, and you're about to you're still under.
Play Boston.
Yeah, we played Boston the next night because we taped it in Boston.
Yeah.
Both the games with them, we just played them again. Both the games with them, and then also the games with OKC, which were, you know, just awesome. It was like awesome. It was an awesome moment for the league. It's feel like you guys both got each other, you know, once where you sort of got your lick in. But just when you're looking at these, at some of the other sort of groups who are at your tier right now, how are you analyzing those matchups now after having played them already a couple times?
Yeah. I don't know. We're just taking it as it is. You know, the funny thing about playing all these teams, there's always an excuse to why either team lost. You know, there's always an excuse. Last game, Boston didn't have Jaylen Brown and somebody else.
Yeah.
And then our excuse this time, we didn't hit shots in the first quarter. Or I just find the whole narrative funny about why this team lost or this team lost. It makes me realize why or how important the 7-game series is.
For sure.
Like, that's how you truly tell which team is better. You know, obviously we hope to do that and, you know, play them in the playoffs. But I don't know, every team has one thing or a couple things that make them great.
Yeah.
You know, New York is New York, you know, Cat, excellent year. You know, he's going off. Jalen Brunson, everything over there is going well for them, playing 42 minutes a game.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah. Well, Cat is also, I mean, just talk about a guy that's stretching the floor and being like, you have to approach him differently than any other big at this point.
You know, my favorite part about Cat, he stretches the floor and gets rebounds. You know, like every time I look, he has 15 rebounds. You know, he's like, Sabonis is leading right now, but Cat is over there, you know, grabbing rebound. You don't really see that a lot from stretch bigs.
Yeah, and that was the question, I think, you know, missing Robinson. Obviously, he's coming back pretty soon, but missing Robinson was like, are you going to be able to get enough from that position from them? Josh is a great rebounder.
Yep.
That's just a crazy rebounder for someone his size. And then, you know, OG, all of them. But it has been on Cat, to your point, to go do that, because if he was even, you know, okay at it, it would be a big glaring point with how their team is built.
Yeah. Another shout out, Josh Hart. It's literally, not to be corny, but he plays with all heart. You know, it's like great player, you know, but to be able to grab offensive rebounds like he does, to be on the other team, it's so annoying, you know? I can't do anything but respect it.
And you've had to playoff battles. I mean, you've had these things. Is there anything that's like, when he does it to you, he did it to Philly last year in that series, when he does it to you in a big game, it's like back-breaking. You know, it's one thing for a guy to come down and drop 50 on you. It's another thing for this when you were basically being like, just somebody box him out. Somebody get rid of him.
Yeah, and it's like, it's a team effort. And the worst part, you know, coach is going to say something. You know, you made one tiny mistake and coach is going to chew you out.
Not like top 5, but do you have a group? I would say, just for argument's sake, can't say your teammates, even though I think a bunch of your teammates would be in this conversation, of guys who are like your favorite role players, guys like that, like Josh, who are just glue guys.
Yeah. Josh, obviously in there. Somebody I always respected, Steven Adams. You know, he's a workhorse. You know, obviously he's been in the league a long time, slowing down. But when he is told to do a job, he does it perfectly.
Are you friends with him?
I wouldn't say I'm friends with him, but he's somebody that I respect, and like I'll like not try to get on the wrong side of, not because he's a
strong dude.
not because he's a strong dude, but just he's a good dude. You know?
We were talking. We done a couple of episodes with him, but we did an ep a couple of weeks ago with Desmond Bain and Jaron.
Yeah,
and we were talking about his diet, because they were teammates with him in Memphis. And I think, I don't want to speak for his diet, but the stuff that's been posted about it and everything like that, he's just another guy that is like, he just lives life his own way.
Yes.
I feel like he has his things that he wants to do, and he does not care about like conforming to whatever people think he needs to.
Yeah, and I respect it so much.
All right, Josh, Steve.
Who's I thinking of? Miles Turner. I mean, I know he's a Texas guy, but
yeah, another guy having a great season.
Yeah, great season. Yeah, he falls into that category of doing his job, shooting threes, just doing things how it should be.
Yeah.
Who else? Who else?
This is a big team so far.
What?
This is like physically.
Oh yeah. I mean,
I feel like you have to. You got to
deal.
You got to deal with them. So you got to.
Yeah. From another guy, TJ McConnell.
Oh, there we go.
Oh man,
just
yeah. No, you said too big of a team, so I got to throw a guard in. Great player. And
yeah,
it always seems to surprise people when he has a great game, but he can easily go out there and 10 points, 10 assists. I remember 3 years ago, he played us. This man had 9 steals in the first half.
He'll take over a game.
Yeah, easily
take over a game.
And you look back and like, what the hell happened?
What's funny with him, JJ's really, really close with him. So I've known him since they were in Philly, and but I didn't know him when he was in high school or college or anything like that. Cam Johnson they didn't go to the same high school, but they both grew up in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
So they were like rivals in high school.
Yeah.
And it's funny for Cam to hear Cam talk about TJ, because he's basically like, TJ in high school was like Michael Jordan. Like he was like a scorer. Like he was going in and dropping like 50 on people every night.
Yeah.
Same size, same everything, but he just approached it way differently. And then basically, and it's a thing to talk to him about, but he basically got to the NBA and he was like, to your point, for me to be able to be effective in the NBA, I'm not taking 25 shots a night.
Right.
I'm going to go in and be a pest, and and then also never miss that 9-foot shot. That little mid-range, he never misses.
Never misses it. He'll drive to the rim, circle about 2 or 3 times, and then
you know it's coming.
It's coming every time, but you can't stop it.
All right, that's a good. Okay, so we got Steve-O, Josh, TJ, Miles. I need one more.
Let's pick somebody from the West.
I got one of Jokic's teammates.
Who?
Aaron Gordon.
Oh yeah.
I think Aaron Gordon fits that. Aaron Gordon is like a person who like unlocked when they won.
Yeah.
I think that they won because of, Jokic and Murray. They won because of a lot of reasons.
Right.
But like he completely unlocks what they do.
Yes.
And I don't think he always gets enough credit for it. Like he plays great D.
Yeah.
He rebounds. It helps this is a strong team.
Yeah. Yeah. What? Shooting threes now?
Yeah, shooting threes now. Yeah. He kind of just does a lot of different stuff for them. I feel like
you almost forget he was in Orlando.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's where he started.
Winning dunk contests.
Yeah.
And like just going and so we did an ep with Jalen Williams from the Thunder a couple weeks ago, and he said this thing about Defensive Player of the Year. I wanted to ask you about. I don't know if you might have seen it.
Yeah.
Do you have thoughts on that?
Awards are always tough
in
the NBA, and I don't want to sound controversial, but it's always about building a narrative. That's just at the end of the day what it is. You gotta make your name known out there and make sure that people see what you're doing. And nobody will understand like guard defense, because it's not like you see a number from it. You see like people don't really care about how many screens you fight over and getting right back in front of your man.
Yep.
But that is so tough. As a big, if somebody screens me, I'm dead. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But for guards to have to go through like 10 screens like Jalen Williams, it's incredible. Yeah.
They're also at certain points being tasked at just constantly defending 1 through 5.
Yeah.
Like he didn't even say that about himself. Someone was saying about Drew Holiday when he was in New Orleans.
Yeah.
He's another one who might be. I mean, he might be on that list as well. But
right.
He's another one who when he was in New Orleans and they were playing those great Warriors teams, and he would basically have to go back and forth between defending Steph, Clay, and KD every possession, and you're just being like, shit, like how are you not gassed?
Right. And to know every tendency, especially in the playoffs, you have like 3 different scenarios you have to understand. It's a different call for this, it's a different call for that. You have to know that for every single player that you're guarding. It's incredible how Drew did it.
Do you have if you're Adam Silver tomorrow for one day, do you have a thing you would change?
I I don't know. I get scared of big decisions like that.
This is the way you're gonna overthink
it.
You're gonna say it that like 2 hours from now you're gonna be like, yo, cut that.
Yeah. What the fuck was he talking about? Or it could be like, that's a fantastic idea.
Or it's like you've like efficiently figured out this like thing in the NBA that needs to be.
Right. I'm gonna be doing the second round.
When I see you again, we're gonna have this thing. You need this. I think we're gonna get a spreadsheet for this answer. I think there's gonna be like a whole thesis to the point where I'm just like, don't put this on this podcast. Just send it to the league.
Hey, I guarantee you, every player will have something ridiculous or something like, like this actually might work.
Des and Jaren's was they want to make the flagrant fouls less called. They just want to be able to like hack people.
Oh man, it's funny. People are never right. I'm speak on the refs touchy subject. The refs are never right. We're never right. It's just a whole debacle.
This is the whole beauty of sports.
Yeah, I just find stuff like that so funny because everybody thinks they're right.
Yep. Yep. And also like it's obviously emotional for you playing, but it's emotional for them too. You're in the middle of a super high stakes environment.
Yes.
And they have to hold their emotions in.
Right.
But you just are like, you just said it, like it's a thankless job in a lot of ways. And it's a job where no one's ever like, oh, refs did a great job last night.
Yeah.
But if you miss one thing, they're going to be on your neck.
You can make 95% of the calls right.
Yeah.
One call, they'll remember it forever.
What was your feeling Saturday night when the trade happened? The Luka trade.
Oh yeah. I mean, obviously shocking. It's like it's a big trade. There's always a big trade, but not on that level, and not.
Do you think he was hacked?
No, I saw it too late to believe that it was hacked. I already saw. You know what I mean?
It's already been confirmed.
Yeah, I already saw everybody talking about it was hacked.
Yeah.
Before I got the chance to think it was hacked. I'm obviously surprised by it.
Yeah.
But I think it makes every team better. If you just look at the actual rosters, I mean, they're still great rosters.
You've been a part of a kind like maybe not as shocking because it wasn't at like 1 a.m. or whatever, but like you've been part of a big trade that everybody is looking at their phone being like, yo, this is crazy. I can't believe this happened. Do you just turn your phone off for like the day? Like, what is your process when you're actually in it?
It was funny because when it happened, I was like, and you knew it was happening. Everybody was tweeting like, oh, this trade should happen. Here's what I think the trade pieces should be. And
but did you think you were going to Cleveland or?
No, I thought I was going to Houston.
Yeah.
Like I thought like, I'm going
go
back to Texas.
Yeah.
I'm going I'm 2.5 hours from home. I'm like, oh, great. And then the funny thing, it's like, Sean Marks called me. It's like, Cleveland, really? Like just honest. I've said it before. You don't think much of Cleveland until you get there, and then obviously I love the city now. Yeah. Not because of basketball. Just
it's a great city. There's amazing things to do, amazing food, everything like that. Yeah. But also, if you think you're going home, that makes sense.
Yeah,
it's not like you wanted to go to Orlando or something. You're like, I get to be with my people.
Exactly. Yeah. So being a part of a big trade that's. Especially as one of like the throw-in pieces. Yeah. I mean, you gotta find your way.
My question, I've talked to some people about this. I'm just curious your perspective on it because I don't know. I certainly don't know the answer to this, but I'm like, when you look at all of this craziness of this week and everything, we're taping this, on this day of the trade deadline. Who knows what's going to happen later on?
Right.
This stuff obviously brings a lot of buzz and attention and everything like that, which I think is an objective positive. I mean, even it's Super Bowl week and everyone's talking about, the NBA stuff.
Yep.
There's also the player component, which you've lived through, which sucks to have to pack your shit up and leave in 3 hours. But I'm also curious about like, when you look at the player movement overall, if you feel like that, if fans grow up being like, oh, I'm a fan of Jarrett in Brooklyn, and then all of a sudden you're gone, or you're a fan of Jarrett in Cleveland, and then all of a sudden, like, something happens.
Right.
If that ends up being a thing where like people root less for the teams than for the players, and if that hurts the, the brand extension, a little bit.
I don't think so. I think there's like certain fans that will always root for the team.
Yeah.
Like me being from Texas, I love my Texas teams. I'll I'll say it. You know, I love the Spurs. That's always been my favorite team. Houston, Dallas. You know, I always grew up. So
Who's your football team?
I've been indoctrinated, however you say it, into the Dallas Cowboys. My dad,
Unfortunate.
huge, I know, huge Cowboys fan. Couldn't go anywhere on Sunday if the Cowboys were playing, so I was forced to sit and watch the games.
This is tough, man. This is the saddest part.
I know. I could be a Browns fan.
Yeah, I was gonna. Yeah, you don't have. This is. I was like, this is the tricky thing about this is a rock in a hard place now.
I know, man. But everybody goes through that as a football fan.
Yeah,
you know, except for Patriots for all those years with Tom Brady.
I'm just like I think football is a good example of this, where I think you and I think there's also a world where these two things are just different and it's apples to oranges a little bit. But football, you know, you're a Cowboys fan. You're a Cowboys fan when it's Tony Romo. You're a Cowboys fan when it's Dak. You're a Cowboys fan when it's whoever we were about to see. When it's whoever, whatever they
exactly.
go put out there, you're still going to be trudging along. Versus if you're growing up and you're you're a fan of you,
right?
Or you're a fan of Donovan, or you're a fan of whoever. You know, your mentality may just be like, we're seeing this with the Dallas fans freaking out right now. And I'm very sympathetic to them because they invested a lot in this guy. And it's not that anyone's wrong, but it's more just kind of like the thing that you've spent all of this bandwidth in is almost more tied up in the individual than in the organization.
It's so much more personal in basketball because you actually see the face, you know, you see the reactions, you see smiling, crying, you know, happy, sad, angry, mad, or whatever. And compared to football, you're just rooting for the jersey. I mean, obviously you have player favorites, but basketball is more centered around the individual. Yeah. You know, you think of one team, think of the Bulls, you think of Michael Jordan, Lakers, Bron. You know, obviously you think of quarterbacks in football, but I just feel like it's more individualized in basketball.
Yeah, it makes sense. It just is how the thing's always been marketed. It's like you're Bulls fans in all over the world because of Michael Jordan.
Right.
You know, so you're just being like LeBron's had that everywhere, and so this is the gift and the curse. Of the gig. I feel like a little bit.
Exactly.
We're taping this the week before. All-Star.
Right.
You guys, as I said before, you're 41-10. You're in a very good place right now. Just in general, everybody sort of seems like they're firing on all cylinders.
Right.
As you're looking for the next, couple months before we hit another bookstore, what are you kind of like? How do you not take your foot off the gas on a team that is basically doing almost everything right?
Right. I will give a lot of credit to Kenny on that.
Yeah.
He will always find something that we're slacking in and try to help build on that. You know, I think that's really important, especially when you're beating every team or you have a great record like we do. You have to find small ways to improve. And he'll nitpick the smallest thing. Recently it's been jump height on contest. You know, it sounds ridiculous.
Just for you or across the board?
Across the board for the whole team, contesting 3-point shots. He wants us to jump higher and jump on every contest. Sounds ridiculous in concept, but you're like, oh shit, he might be right. You know what I mean? And this people start missing and just the small things to keep on getting better and better really make a difference. Is
that with him now, just knowing him as well as you do, is that how much of that is film versus it is instinctual, he's just on the court, he can see it?
I think it's both. Yeah. Especially for him, he watches so much film. He watches us play, watches any type of basketball that he can lay his eyes on, and he tries to take away things from everything.
When we were talking before, I thought it was really interesting when you were talking about yourself, about how, all these different things you do basically are an escape, and it allows you to lock when you really, whether it's in working out or actually playing, it allows you to fully lock in. But you're clearly such a detail-oriented person. We've gone over in many ways, and we're going to keep going over. So when this happens, if Kenny starts talking about that, he starts being like, okay, your contest needs to be, an 1.5 inches higher or something like that. Is that a thing that you feel like in your brain you're understanding right away? Or is there still a thing where you are, depending on what it is, because you're so, you're so instinctually used to playing a certain way.
Right.
Maybe the details don't work as well in that as they do in, another field.
Yeah. It takes time to always remember to do it. Because, there's so many other things that you're trying to do, trying to make right. And, they'll always yell it on the sideline, like, pressure the ball, contest the shot. So there's always reminders to do these things.
Yeah.
And like over the course of like 10 games, you just keep doing it more and more. And now it's like instinctual to do it.
Yeah. That's the game behind the game. The mental game behind the game always feels like it's the most,
Yes.
that's going to be and that also is this is like, that's the playoff differentiator. Because once you get to May and June, everyone's really good.
Literally.
Like you don't have any, you don't have you're and the 7-game series, like you brought up before,
Right.
like you were in a spot where you're like, okay, we're playing the Knicks and this is a team that has, 2 all-star starters and 3 other guys who could have been all-stars.
Yeah.
You're like, for us to beat them, we're very physically gifted just like they are, but like we have to find that edge. And so finding whatever that is a
right. And against like good teams like that, you got to be nearly perfect.
Yeah.
Like if somebody gets going, that's bad. You want to just stop that from the beginning.
82 games.
Mm-hmm.
Are you into that?
I mean, it's one of those things. It's always been what it is.
Yeah.
It's a long season, but
you're just used to it because it's always been the way that it is.
Exactly. Like I can't imagine anything else.
This will never happen. But I heard a theory from somebody that I saw it online, and it was basically like if other sports, this would be the same case in baseball. Baseball's 162 games. If other sports took a model where it was basically like, it was either like the Premier League model, which would be like 58 games where every team plays each other twice, or the really drastic one is like do it like football where you play like once a week and every game, basically every game is like the playoffs to a certain extent. And how people would approach everything differently when it becomes a thing where you have to have that lock in all the time versus like, okay, it's second night of a back-to-back, and I'm just like with you guys, like last night was a good example. You beat a really good team, a team that's had a great, a super tough and also just effective, gifted team. You beat them on the second night of a tough back-to-back, like going from Boston to there. Right. And so dealing with that, that's that kind of slog and the mental and physical, tribulations that come with that. But like, if there was a world where it was like, okay, we know that we know it's like, we know we got Detroit next week, like football. We know we got Boston the week after. We know this, if it would change anything.
I just thought of this. Like, if I imagine us having like a game a week, I don't think people understand how much they wouldn't want to practice. Like
they gotta practice.
Like in the NBA, there's a lot of days where you just come into the gym, you watch film, you can't practice hard, or at least for us, because you got to save your legs from the game tomorrow. It'd be like having a day of training camp almost every single week. Yeah. And I don't know. It might just be me.
This is a great argument against it. This is the best argument against it ever.
I don't think people understand. Like, we're going to have to be like overseas teams and have hard practices at least 3 times before every single game. Yeah. And me personally, I think it's so much more fun to actually play a game than practice for a game.
And no bookstores. And no, like, you don't get to do any of it. You don't get any, we don't get to do any of this. Right. If it's like, you're also, and this is always interesting comparing the basketball and football is football is such a, it's obviously it's a physical talent gift thing in terms of the rosters, but it's also such a gamesmanship, coaching schemes, this defense, this blitz package, this whatever. And basketball has that for sure in terms of matchups and, the scouts and everything like that. But there is a little bit of like, you are, if you guys had lost, hypothetically, you guys had lost last night. Right. You don't want to lose 2 games in a row, especially to teams in your conference, but like no one's freaking out. You're now 41-12 versus, or 40-12. It's like, it's just one of the things where there's no, versus if you lose 2 games in a row in the NFL, it's like, fire the coach. Literally. Get these guys out of here. Like so I don't know that you want to walk into that either. That's a whole nother beast of like, they're never satisfied.
Never satisfied. Like, it's like you said in football, it's like is he the right piece after 1 week? Oh, he got 50 yards instead of 60 yards. It's just every small thing compounds into something great if you only show it once a week.
All right. This is a busy day, so I think we're going to end it here. Shout out to Bridge Street Books for hosting us. We will be back soon in another city around the country. I think at a certain point, we're not going to reveal it right now. We're going to do a Cleveland store because I know you have a bunch.
Yeah.
But that will be a surprise for when we bust out the Cleveland store. But send in any ideas or anything like that.
Love it. One thing, shop local,
Yep.
shop small.